Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Cyprus Asking People Things. And today we have the lovely Andrew Coshan on, who is at this current point in time acting as lead role in Merrily We Roll Along. But I'm going to hand it over to Andrew to just let him talk a little bit about himself and just get you all up to speed on pretty much who he is.
Hello, how are you? How are you going, Cyprus?
I'm very good.
Yeah, wonderful. We're just sitting here in the Hayes Theatre after we've done a matinee on a two-show day on Thursday. Erin just had her first show. It was lovely, wasn't it?
It was,
Beautiful.
it was.
I am 28. I'm from Auckland originally. I have 2 degrees, one in Performing Arts and Theatre Studies from Otago University and a musical theatre degree from Whopper in Perth. And then I was performing professionally in Melbourne for a couple of years, and then lockdown stopped that from happening, and here we are on the other side, double vaccinated, performing to audiences of people. Who knew?
Absolutely. And it's been a really interesting 4 months because none of the set actually got dismantled, so it felt like we were in purgatory.
Yeah. So we got to our first preview, which was like the 20-something of June. I can't remember. Anyway. And then, so the set was built because there was nothing in here before that. The set was bumped in on the 1st of June, I think.
Yeah.
And then it was, we had our first preview, I think it was the 24th of June. And then it's been there ever since. And today is, what's the date today? November 4th.
4th, yes.
I think, yeah. So it's November now. So I think this is the longest built set that's been in the Hayes for a long time, I imagine.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I'll have to ask someone.
It's the longest that our musical director, Andrew Warboys, has been in here.
Yeah, right. And, he lives here, so.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so it was so nice to come back, though. But I guess we'll get to that.
Yeah, we definitely will. And the reason why I've got you on this is because you are from Auckland, New Zealand, Australia Mark II.
Yeah.
That's a joke. A shit one.
Well, 2.0, so it's the better one.
Or is
If
this...
it's Mark II, then it's the better Australia, isn't it?
Or is Australia New Zealand 2.0?
I mean, it depends who you ask, I guess.
But we've got you here because you've actually been away from your home for quite a while now, a couple of years, and you are currently living with the director for Come From Away.
Yeah, the musical director.
Yes, yeah, the musical director. And I mean, I've lived on the Central Coast for my entire life, so I don't have a semblance of what it's like to live away from home. So I just thought it was so interesting of how do you actually deal with it?
Yeah, well, it's actually something the last couple of years I have, I guess, struggled with, but something that I found very interesting is just the concept of what home is, because I lived in Auckland until I was 18, and then I went to Otago University in Dunedin for 4 years, and then I spent 3 years in Perth, and then I spent 2 years in Melbourne, and then this year I spent 8 months at home in Auckland, and then back then here in Sydney for the last few months. And because of COVID and things like that, I haven't had my own bedroom for about 4 years. Like, I've been either at my parents' house, or I've been sharing a bedroom, or like I haven't had my own space since I was at drama school, which it's become something that's like I'm craving now, of course. But yeah, like just the concept of home is something that has really interested me in recent years. And in addition, it's like, well, is Auckland still my home? Is Melbourne my home now, even though I don't have a lease there, but I still kind of identify as a Melbourne-based artist, even though I haven't been in Melbourne for over a year now. I haven't set foot in Melbourne since last October. Could that still be my home? something that makes this more complicated is my mother was born in England and my father was born in India. Like he's Anglo-Indian. And so I don't even have a heritage in New Zealand.
Wow.
Like my brothers and I were the first generation of my family to be born in New Zealand. And so I don't really have a historical or blood right as a New Zealander. I just happened to be born there. And so do I have a right to call that my home? It's really, and I've spoken to people about this. And when I've spoken to people about this, they were like, home is where your heart is. Home is a feeling. Home is a person. Home is so many other abstract things. And I guess it's kind of, you just have to see the world like that. And I still identify as a New Zealander, and I love New Zealand culture, and I love being a New Zealander. But yeah, it's interesting when I know moving forward, I'm only going to spend more and more time away from New Zealand because of chasing acting opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. And when you actually started your passion for acting, when was that, in fact?
I was kind of late coming to the party, actually. Like, I didn't do drama or music at school. I did some dance stuff, and so I did the school musical in year 12. Well, in New Zealand, our years are named different. So your first year of school is called prep or reception or something, like different places call
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten, yeah.
Or we have preschool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, then we just start from year 1 when you're at primary school. And so we go to year 13.
Wow.
So our year 13 is the same as your year 12. It's just named a different thing, which is very confusing when you go to Australia and no one ever talks about their final year of high school. You're like, why is everyone just in love with year 12 and no one talks about year 13? Like applying for university, they were asking for my year 12 results. I thought, what? Did I not have to do year 13? I don't understand. Anyway, so when I was in year 12 or Australian year 11, we did Fiddler on the Roof in high school, and I was so nervous. I put my name down to audition, and then I didn't go to the audition because I was too nervous to sing.
Wow.
In front of the teachers. And so, but then because I did a lot of dance stuff at school, the director, the drama teacher, Mr. DeGrew, he came up to me after one of my classes and said, Andrew, I see you didn't turn up to your audition. And I said, oh yeah, I was too scared. I didn't want to, like, I've never sung before. I'm scared. And he said, well, hey, I need you to audition because I already want to cast you as Fiedka because he has to do the pas de deux in the back of Little Bird. And I need you to do that. So you have to audition. So he really set my life off on a tangent there, getting me involved in that. So then, you do because I think I wanted to be a dancer at that point. I wanted to dance. I was kind of hedging my bets. I was taking a lot of science subjects, and I wasn't quite sure whether, people tell you that you've got to get a real job.
The elusive real job.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that means. And, but my dad actually, he always said, if you got paid $1 million a year anyway, what would you do? Like if no matter what job you did, your salary was $1 million a year, what would you choose to do? And that's what you should do. And even though I was taking calculus and biology and etc., I kind of knew that I would be on stage.
Yeah.
And at the time, because I didn't sing or act, I wanted to be a dancer. But then in doing this musical, I was like, right, okay. And then it kind of broadens your horizon a bit to understand that there's so much more to stage performance than what I had been doing. And then that kind of made me want to learn more about that.
Did you find it was a trial by fire? Or was it really easy?
Not so much in a high school setting, I don't think. The trial by fire came a bit later when I went to uni. I went and did a performing arts, it was performing arts and theatre studies at Otago University. There was, in New Zealand, there's Tui Whakaari, which is an acting school. and I think that's probably the most famous acting course in New Zealand. And then NASDA is the National Academy of Singing and Dramatic Arts, which is got a musical theatre course and things like that. But because I didn't do music at school, I was like, there's no way I would get in there. I didn't even try.
Yeah, I have the exact same story
Yeah.
with the con. I thought I can never get in the con. I'm going to go do an IT degree. But my friend was like, I'm going to try out for AIM. And I thought, I'll never get in for that. But whatever, I'll come with you anyway. And
Yeah.
same sort of situation.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what happened when I ended up going to Whopper. My friend was like, I'm going to audition for Whopper. This was the end of my Otago degree because I'd kind of learnt to sing and act by that point. But yeah, she wanted to audition for Whopper and said, come along. And so I did, and I got in and she didn't, which is, it's much harder for girls, of course. But she's doing well. She lives in Barcelona with her husband now, so
wow.
she's all right. But yeah, so when I went to Otago, I decided I wanted to learn, to sing and act. And I think I had a little bit of natural singing ability and some natural acting ability, which was very helpful. But the first kind of singing classes that I had at uni, that was the trial by fire, where I had no concept of how difficult singing was. I think that was the only set of classes I've ever done where I got a C average.
Wow.
Which is like, you're basically failing. You're almost failing.
Yeah.
They say C's get degrees, but I've never had that mentality before.
Is there also another grading standard over there? Because we have, P's and then C's and D's.
Oh, right. No, this was at my uni. It was the American, like A+ is the best, F is the worst. So I got like C's and C minuses through my first singing assessments, which, looking back, I cannot believe I was naive enough to think I can just, I'm going to go to uni and do this university level singing assessment, like as if it was going to teach me to sing, and it wasn't something that I had to. Actually, it was kind of their fault because I did audition and they did allow me to do it. So, but anyway, I did learn. There was a big trial by fire on singing, and everyone in my class was remarkable. And I was like, I had a nice tone because I just had a baritone whatever naturally, but my pitch was bad. I was not in key often.
Yeah, I remember my tryout for uni, and I couldn't tell what a key signature was on a piece of music. And the university instructor said to me, so what key are we in here? And I was looking at it, and there was a sharp on there, and there was the treble clef, and I was thinking, don't know what he's talking about. And he goes, so we have an F sharp here. That means we're in the key of G. And I'm thinking in my head, what the fuck does F sharp have to do with G? I was that naive about it. But similar to you, maybe, I found that because I was so far behind, I had to push myself so much more on the train back and forth from Sydney, always, digging into the theory and, putting the hand up to do those extra things. And, look at where you are now. You're doing professional music theatre.
Yeah, which is weird. When I look back on, for example, there was kids who, when I was at school, who were musical theatre performers, and they were people who already at 10, 15, 18, whatever, wanted to do what I now do. And I don't think any of them are doing that. But at that time, I had never even been on I'd never had a lead. I'd never sung a solo kind of thing. I never sung a solo in a musical until I was 20. Yeah, I think I was 20. Oh, I was at university for sure. So maybe 19. And it wasn't good, let me tell you. It was not a good.
Is there any footage of that?
There is. It's Musical Theatre Dunedin will have an
archive,
an archival of it for sure. But my God, and I remember we watched it back afterwards, and because that was my big problem was that when I started, because I didn't have much singing experience, I couldn't hear when I was in and out of pitch.
Oh no.
I didn't know. And so when we watched it back, I was like, who let me go on stage like that? Who is responsible for this? Who was like, you know what? That's all good. We'll just let that go. And it is something that my close friends who were in that show with me, it did become, once I became a good enough singer that it was okay to bully me for how bad I was, it was a thing that they were like, yeah, you know, you back in that show, you know, you were almost on pitch sometimes, you know, kind of, God, it was, yeah, if anything, it's just a testament to how far I've come. So I'll let's just say that.
Well, you know, it's the point that it's not about when you start, and it's not about how much skill you have when you start. It's about how much effort you put in to get good at what you love doing, or what you actually want to achieve to do.
And of course, it's about practicing smart, not practicing. Like, practicing smart is much better than practicing hard.
Oh, 100%.
And obviously, if you can practice smart hard, then
you're gonna get double.
That's the best. But
yeah, you've been moving around home a lot, and you're saying you're changing what you've considered to be home. What are some tools that you've used? Like, I know when I go in from show to show, I'm making a lot more friends and moving from group of people to group of people who have their own set of values and beliefs and views on the way in which things are. How do you feel you mold in with new people in a completely new setting, especially in the close quarters of a dressing room?
Yeah, I think I've gotten very good at making friends, I guess, because, you know, you have your school friends, and then I went to Otago and I made Otago friends, and I went to Perth and I had my Perth friends, and then I went to Melbourne and I made Melbourne friends. And to have now lived, if you include this, you know, because it's been 6 months now in Sydney, if you include Sydney, I've now lived in 5 cities. So, and you kind of, when you move cities, often you do have to start your friends again, I guess. Oh, well, just in terms of your, the ones that are close enough to, you know, hang out with.
Yeah.
But that is something that I found just on Friends, is that because when I was moving around a lot, I was naive enough. It's actually a cue in one of the lines in the show, which hits me pretty hard, is friendship is like a garden. Yes. You have to water it and tend it and care for it.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't appreciate until some very key friendships of mine wilted because I assumed that they would be strong forever. Because I felt like whenever I see that person, it'll be the same as it was
old
before.
times.
Yeah, it'll be like old times, and we'll be best friends again. But then I remember a friend being really mad at me, and we were really close friends, and there was this one thing that I didn't even realize I did, and he was not happy with me. And I remember at the time being like, he's being sensitive, like and thinking that he was being unreasonable. But then as I grew a bit older and wiser, and I kind of, you know, could see things from other people's perspective a bit more, I realized that, like, if I was him, I would be mad too. And I was really like, and the damage was done at this point. By the time I really learnt my lesson, I was like, right, I really lost that friend because I wasn't empathetic of how he felt. And I didn't water the friendship. I didn't tend it. And I think with moving around a lot, it's something that I've now felt, those are the things that make things feel more like home, is when you have those friendships that have lasted for a long time. And when those still exist, because when I went to Perth, for example, I moved countries. I moved to a city that I'd never set foot in, and I didn't know a single person in Western Australia.
And let's be real, Western Australia is essentially a country in itself in Australia.
Perth is the most isolated major city in the world. And meaning it's the major city furthest away from any other major city. So I really had to start my friends over again there, because everyone I knew was in a different country, 5 hours different to me. And so, and 3 months in, I remember 3 months into Whopper feeling so alone because, yeah, you become best friends with the people in your class, but then you realize that none of them have known you for more than 3 months. They don't really know you.
No.
Yeah, they don't know you. It's in their interest to be your best friend or to be at least nice to you because they've got to spend the next 3 years with you.
Yeah.
So they're not going to tell you if you don't get along with them naturally. They're not going to let that show because it's
Yeah.
You've got to spend 3 years with these people. And so I really had a bit of a quarter life crisis, if you could call it that.
Like in the scene.
Yeah, I was really, really manic about it. But yeah, I kind of had this little crisis of having, not that I had no friends, but I felt so lonely even though I was surrounded by people because no one was one of these close friends. No one was a deep friendship because I'd only known them for 3 months. And that's really where I learnt that that's the thing when I am traveling a lot and I'm away from friends and I feel like I'm not at home, it's those pillar people in my life that I'll contact or that I'll FaceTime or that I'll whatever, that'll make me feel less just like I'm flying by the seat of my pants. What am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
because, even coming to Sydney and then getting in lockdown, I couldn't see anyone.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I kind of feel like, what am I doing here? Because I currently don't have a lease anywhere.
Yeah.
The gypsy life has led me here. I've had one suitcase of belongings since October last year.
Wow.
And I'm very excited to reclaim like another like 2 or 3 suitcases of clothes and belongings.
Yeah.
And someone was saying the other day, you'll realize that because you've gone so long without them, you'll be like, I never wear that anyway. And
Yeah.
you'll throw it all away. But yeah, like to have gone this long, there has been some tough times. And I think it is those strong friendships that have stood the test of time that have really been the things that made me feel like home.
Do you feel like if you were to move to West End or Broadway or any other major theatre centre of the world, you feel like all of these tools you've learned has really set you up? And if you have any primary things that you've learned, if you could boil those down into like several principles, what would they be?
I think I will probably go to London at some point because my mother is British, so I've got a British passport, and so I'm gonna do it at some point. And having moved countries once, moved cities a million times, I think I feel secure in doing that. I feel like I know I'm gonna be safe and confident. But to boil it down, I think you got to just throw caution to the wind in a sense. Oh, actually, that's not necessarily true. When I went to Otago and Perth, I kind of went blind. I kind of was like, I know people who have done that, or that's got such a good reputation, it'll be fine. I'll sort it out as I go, which is kind of how it seems. I look back and it all obviously turned out well, but it feels crazy to me now that I didn't plan so much of it. I didn't research the city. I didn't, or whatever. Yeah, I didn't. I was so unprepared. I just went and it would be fine.
Do you feel like that was actually a positive part where you just sort of let yourself go into the wind knowing that you were going to be living there for a period of time and that you would find about nice places to go, people to meet through your university friends?
And because I had an institution to go to, that at least structured my life. Like it is what is terrifying about when I do plan to go to London is that I will be going. I'll probably I've got some friends in London who I'll probably ask one of them if I can stay in their house for a hot second before I find a place. And then, it's just kind of like, there's things that I want to do and there's things that I need to do to get the things that I want, etc. Find an agent and find out that get into those auditioning circles and things like that. Go to classes and make those kind of contacts that you make in classes and things like that. There's all these things, but there's really no structure. It's just whatever I decide to do that day, I'll do.
Yeah.
And I think that's far more terrifying than going to where an institution is. But I think if you are if you are moving cities or you are moving around a lot, I think I like to keep it simple in the sense that I don't take a lot of things. You can buy things, like things are things. You don't have to. I know so many people who pack like 4 suitcases to move somewhere, and I guess some people feel like they need to do that, but I think it's only going to hinder you. I think if you need more things, you can buy more things. Like if you really need it, you'll buy it, or
you'll source it somehow.
I think you'll be amazed at the amount of things that you won't need.
Yeah.
And that will only weigh you down. And so it'll be so much easier if you just go with essentials, and then and of course, as humans do, you'll start accumulating things depending on how long you're there. I think that helps. I think it's all about being confident that it depends why you're going. Like if you're going because you're chasing, for example, when I'm going to go to London, I'm going to be chasing something that I love to do. I'm going to be chasing theater. I'm going to be chasing acting. I'm going to be chasing singing. And so I'll be there to do something that I love to do.
Yeah.
And so you live in that place of love.
Yeah. And you're always looking for those points of opportunity when you have that mastery goal.
Yeah.
Like all of these gigs that I've found now, I was in the deep end last year. Lockdown happened, lost so much work, but then it didn't stop me, and I'm assuming yourself, from going, oh, well, what are these other people doing, and who else has things happening? Like, what other things are happening that I can just dip my toe into?
Yeah. So, I did a couple of Zoom concerts and things in lockdown, and I actually, because I play piano in Merrily, If we went ahead, if COVID never existed and we went ahead in April 2020, I would not be playing Good Thing Going live.
Really?
I could play the verses and choruses, but I couldn't play the bridge. The bridge was so difficult.
It is hard.
And I still don't play it. I don't play it as written. Am I allowed to say that? Is Sondheim going to get me? I play a simplified version of the bridge, which, 3 people maybe might notice, like whatever. But yeah, like I went and had some lessons with some pianists, and they were like, oh yeah, we simplify things all the time. We simplify things like. Yeah, and because one of them was like, "Oh, if I was playing this, I would do this," and I was like, "But that's not what's written. I thought you were a pianist. I thought that you would." And he was just like, "No, fuck that, no way." And this is like a guy who's played, first keys in a lot of pits in New Zealand. And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And so that was only at the beginning of this year that I kind of got to that point with the bridge, and therefore, like, I really, because I couldn't play the bridge, there's no way they would have faked just one part of the song, because it would have messed up the balancing of the whole number. And so, like that's what I did in lockdown was I did some Zoom concerts, and I played piano a lot, and I practiced a lot, and because then I was like, if I've got an extra year, I really have no excuse for not playing these songs live, do I?
No, not at all.
Even if I'm not a trained pianist. But yeah, like I think, it was just about finding something to keep you stimulated, I guess.
Most definitely. And on that, you actually learn a lot of skills when you're acting, whether it be like you're quite an avid dancer, you have a lot of dance styles under your belt. You're obviously a singer. You're now playing keys live in a show. Do you find that you were trained in those realities of having to learn actually complex skills that sometimes have nothing to do with acting within your degrees?
Yeah, I think at Whopper they definitely taught you. We actually did this assignment once called alterations. I think it was called alterations. Anyway, and our teacher just said,
Mm.
pick something, pick a skill that you can't do now and learn it,
Wow.
because you're gonna have to do that in a show,
Mm.
basically. And someone learned how to finish a Rubik's cube. Someone learned how to roll a cigarette. Um, someone learned how to. There was a weird one about. Oh, someone learned how to knit. That wasn't the weird one. But yeah, people just learned all these things, and they've since graduating and doing shows. Like I learned to fence in Hamlet.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
we did. I played Laertes, and so he has to do this quite epic fence
Mm.
with Hamlet at the end, and so we spent weeks and weeks learning how to fence, which was the best. And yeah, I think it is. I think it's a step. It's only a step removed from dancing,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense, because dancing is all about using your body and understanding the shape that your body's making, etc. And learning a skill is similar to that. Like, I think because I'm not a trained pianist, when I'm playing the piano, it's the shapes of my hands that I remember,
Yes.
more so than, like, if at any point someone just said freeze on this chord and they said, what chord are you playing? I would have absolutely no, I would have to look at my fingers and then like stack the notes in my head and then figure it out. It would probably take me like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think being a trained dancer, not that I'm like a dancer, but having dance experience does help you to learn new skills, I find.
And so, when you're learning these new skills or these other things, do you find that you have found new passions that you would want to dive more into when you're older, or even, shift your career focus when you're in your 30s or 40s, or.
I think, I think it just kind of gives you a greater appreciation for theatre in the sense of how broad it goes. And it doesn't necessarily make me want to change careers, but it makes me, the more you understand about theatre, because a lot of actors become directors or become
Yep.
producers or become, they enter acting adjacent careers later on.
Yes.
And I think, like, I'm open to that happening. It hasn't like hit me as something that I want to do yet, because I'm still so in love with acting and storytelling. And because I think maybe because I came to acting late, I did dance things, then I started doing musicals, and I fell in love with singing, and then doing more musicals, I realized it was really the acting that I loved. And so doing play, I find just as much satisfaction. It's just a different kind of satisfaction from doing plays than musicals. And I'm fortunate enough to have done like just as many plays professionally after graduating as I have musicals, and I really love that about how my career has gone. Yeah, I think maybe because I came late to it, I still haven't. I'm not at the point where I'm sick of it, or not that I'll ever be sick of it, but
Yeah.
I'm not at the point where I'm like, I want to try something else. I'm like, I haven't finished this yet. I want to keep doing more of this and more of this. But even then, with this straight plays and then musicals, and then also I haven't really done that much screen. And so now I want to try to do a bit of that. And
Yes.
so I think I still feel like I'm very much at the beginning of my acting journey. I don't think I'm not ready to change careers or to, no matter what I'm learning, I don't think, not yet anyway, I haven't found anything that makes me want to sidestep.
Yeah, because I've also found with doing musicals, playing drums is very much the same in that sense of acting. There are so many different avenues to go through. There's the being in percussion ensembles, there's doing musicals, there's being in the covers scene, there's also being the drummer for original artists, or then being the original artist yourself. I find that there are so many things to do within this one rabbit hole.
Yeah, and you're not even talking different genres at this point.
Exactly.
Like, because I thought you were going to say, like, there's jazz and there's soul and then there's blah, blah, blah. And you were totally not even speaking genre. So within all of those, then there's also, like, you might do, African drum ensemble, or you might do a little jazz group that does improv, like there's so many. Yeah, I totally see what you mean.
Yeah, and in a sense, I also find, especially with musical theatre, is that it's always shifting from new ideas to new ideas, and you're always problem solving these new things, and you're, in a sense, always finding a new home. It's not like when you tour with a single show for a long time, where it's not that you necessarily get sick of it, but it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas when you work with new people, new directors, new scripts and scores, you're always finding new problems to solve, and not problems in a bad way, but problems in a, how do I approach this role, or how do I approach this music?
That's the exciting stuff.
Exactly.
I did a workshop for a new musical, and then did the premiere season of that. That Dean, who directed Merrily, he wrote My Brilliant Career is the name of the, it's based on a book, but that's the name of the musical. And we did a week workshop, or a 2-week workshop. I think it was just a week, I don't know. Anyway, but we did a workshop of the first draft, and workshopped it for 7 days. And it was the most fulfilling and rewarding acting. And I remember saying to some people there, I was like, if I could full-time do this, like 9 to 5, that would be it. Like, that would be the best. Not that I don't love performing like a finished work, but I love seeing, like, we would read a scene, or we would do a song, and they would ask us about it, and then someone might be like, I think that character's quite relaxed. I don't think they would, like, even just down to one word, like they say do not, I think they'd say don't. I don't think they'd, or whatever. That's a basic example, but you know what I mean.
Sondheim always uses cats and dogs.
Yeah. And and seeing the writer then be like, great, you're right, and like changing the line next day, coming back with a new script that you were responsible for molding. That was so rewarding. That was the best. Yeah, it felt so artistically fulfilling in a way that I hadn't experienced before, that I really loved. And so, like, I think that's still the only proper workshop I've done, but I would love to do more.
Have you had any ideas of writing any plays, musicals, or whatnot?
I've been telling myself for years that I'm going to write a cabaret.
Oh, lovely.
Or something like that. But then I can never decide what it would be about. Because, like, I've done concerty things just for my friends and family in Auckland, and, it's just me telling little stories and singing songs. But like a good cabaret with a central theme or a storyline that pangs at the end with a message or something that you take away, like those. Like, I want to, essentially a mini musical. Yeah. Hour-long musical, 1 person, 2 people, 4 people, whatever. I've told myself for a long time I was going to write one of those. And I have had ideas, and I just have terrible, like, I saw this graph once, and it says, it's essentially a upside down bell curve of how great you think your idea is over time. And the beginning of time being when you have the idea, and the end of the time being when you've finished the piece. And so it starts at the top, and it's like, this is the best idea ever. And then it goes down, and it's like halfway to 0. Yeah. And it's like, wow, this is actually really hard to achieve. And then you get to 0. It's like, this is the worst idea ever. And that's where most people quit. Yeah. And that's what I've managed to do with any idea that I've had. But then it goes up again into like, actually, now that I'm getting a more grip on this. This is a good idea again. Like I understand where I was coming from. And then when you finish, you're like, yeah, I'm so glad I went through that to finish and have this. And now I finished this thing, and I thought it was a good idea, and it ended up being a good idea, but it was hard in the middle when you're kind of like, how do I actually achieve this thing?
Yeah.
And so I've had ideas, and I've storyboarded a few, and I've thought about it, but I always get into that pit and then be like, who am I kidding? I'm terrible. No one wants to hear what I have to say.
Well, in that sense, have you ever thought about having a writing partner? Because I'm doing a thing at the moment as a co-writer, and Andrew has said, it's having
That's your writing partner's name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Not you,
me.
Andrew. Andrew Warboys. There are a lot of Andrews in this production, actually.
Yeah, too many.
But he said, having that other person when you get to that 0 point,
Yeah.
or when you get to that 0 point of a certain song, it's like, oh, it's just not working. And you have that little prod saying, no, it's actually good.
Yeah.
It's just that part there is not very good. Just come back to it tomorrow and have a rethink, or, I'm just going to leave the computer right now and you have a play with it. Have you ever thought about searching for somebody, or have you found anybody?
I think it's such a vulnerable thing to create art, and to be like, I think at least when I'm given a script, at least I can be like, well, if I'm bad, you can blame the writing, or whatever. You can blame the writing, or you can blame something else. But when it's something, if you're doing the writing, like there's different levels of it, like how removed you are from the actual origin of the art, which in musical theater, for example, is the composition and the book. That is really where the art stems from, and then layers get added onto it with the actors and the direction and the choreography and the lighting and this costume and all of those layers of art. I saw a quote the other day that musical theater isn't an art form, it's 14 art forms smashed together.
Oh, totally.
And at its very core, each piece is the words and the notes.
Yep.
And so that's where it's most vulnerable to create, I find. And so I think in order to have a writing partner, you've got to be the most vulnerable and be like, I wrote this.
Yeah.
And be ready for them to be like, that's not good.
Yeah.
And that's really scary.
It is.
And so that's, I think that's the hurdle that I need to get up. So I'm just like, I don't need to write something. I've got this show coming up. I don't need to write something right now. And I keep telling myself that I'll write something, and I'm like, I've got 2 months here. I can start something then. But then if I have something coming up, I can always be like, I don't need to write it right now. I'll always procrastinate. So I think it's only when because after Merrily, I don't have anything booked in. So I think come end of November, once I am actually, there's nothing for me forward, I think I'll have much more motivation to create in that sense. So we'll see how that goes. But at this point, in the past rather, the hurdle of vulnerability, I think, is what has stopped me from completing something, because it's so hard to write something completely on your own. You've got to have soundboards and people who you appreciate, who can tell you what's good and whether you're going in the right direction and things like that. But you've got to be vulnerable enough to let them read it.
And also having the person know who you are and how you actually receive that feedback. Like I know with my old person who I used to write with in the past, couldn't write with them in the same room because the feedback was so sharp and direct. I mean, it gave me thick skin, but that linkage didn't work. Whereas, writing with Andrew, it's, there is a sharpness and a directness.
I think that's necessary, of course.
Totally is, but there's also not a total, that's a shit idea, get it out.
Yeah,
it's also like,
it's always like, I can see what you're trying to do, but it's about the execution of the idea. Because I think generally, if you're writing partners, you'll agree on the idea at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's about the execution of the idea, not. So even if you don't like, or if you do something that, or you don't like something they did, they don't like something you did, or I mean, and generally speaking, if
Yeah.
you know when you're like, this isn't my best work,
Yeah.
and then when they tell you, which almost makes it harder because you're like, it confirms your self-doubt.
Yes.
Which I feel like hurts more than when I have confidence in something and someone says they don't have confidence in it.
Mm.
I feel confident to be like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about
Yeah.
why. Let's talk about this. Whereas if I have doubt in something I've written and then someone comes along and agrees, I'm like, I knew I was terrible. You were right. I don't know why I'm doing this.
But it's when you do find those one or two people who you can really write with and confide yourself in, you can really get some amazing work out of yourself, even if it's just a single song,
Yeah.
EP, album, or cabaret or musical.
I actually wrote a song in lockdown because it was it's this thing I've been telling myself and I wrote down once, if you want to be a writer, you have to actually write.
Mm.
And and that sounds very obvious and surface level, but to me that meant you don't have to write anything good. You just have to write something.
Mm.
And so I wrote a song. I was like, I'm just gonna pick the four chords that everyone loves. What is it? 1 4 5 1 5 6 4
Yes.
1. And I was just gonna pick a 4-chord progression, write something, because I'd never finished anything.
Yes.
I was like, I'm just gonna finish a song, and I'm giving myself permission for it to be terrible.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I sent it to a friend of mine who is a composer and has a musical that he's written that is performed in New Zealand, and like he's far more established. Like he's an established musical theater writer, creator, composer, and he went straight into like collaboration mode because he loves to write that kind of stuff. He was like, well, I see you're doing this, but are you trying to do this? And I was like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what I've done wrong. I don't want to know. The exercise was that I was going to write something because then it's finished. And once it's finished, then I am a writer or a composer in inverted commas, because I did write something once and finish it. And he was like, it could be better if. I was like, I don't care. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready for that.
But it's also...
We'll go back to it later.
It's also practicing finishing something.
Yes.
That is such a hard hurdle in itself, because, you can start so many things. You can put those 4 chords down, but it's saying to yourself, okay, is this the verse? Is this the chorus? Am I going to keep these 4 chords?
Yeah.
When you're writing a play, who are the characters? I'm going to have this person be, the typical bad person. But then finishing it and saying, even though it's not great, it's finished, and I learn a lot by doing the process.
I find as well, the more complex the piece of art, for example, 14 art forms smashed together. If you were doing a musical, and obviously there's a quote, I think it's a Leonard Bernstein quote, the 2 things that an artist needs to create beautiful art is an idea, a good idea, and a deadline.
Yep.
Because if you don't have a deadline, you will never finish. And so the thing about something as complicated as musical theater is they'll always have a deadline, because it won't be finished, and they'll find a producer, and the producer will want to put it on, and then you'll start marketing, and you'll have a date for opening, and you'll be like, okay, well,
it's got to happen.
It's 2 years away or whatever, but it's still got a workshop and do all that stuff. And you've got to eventually, wherever it gets to, you've got to let go of it. You've got to let go of it and be like, this is as far as it got. And actually, Sondheim is quoted, there's only one of his shows that he wouldn't change anything in, which is like, remarkable when you think of all of his amazing works that people love.
Yes.
And there's only one of his shows. I think it's Assassins.
Yes, I believe so.
He is the only one that he thinks he wouldn't, that he says he wouldn't want to change things. And I think letting go of an incomplete piece of art is horrifying.
Most definitely. I got to say, thank Andrew Coshan.
Well, the last name is confusing. Like, I said Coshan for 20 years, and then people at uni started saying Coshan. So I told my dad, I was like, oh, it's funny, yeah, some people at uni call me Coshan. And he said, oh, it's actually Coshan.
Oh, really?
And I was like, why have we said Coshan for my entire life? And he said, because that's just what people say when they see it, and we don't really care about correcting them. But
well, let's
yeah.
put it on record. Thank you very much, Andrew Coshan.
Well, it still sounds weird to me because I've only known about it for a few years. But yeah, I kind of just accept everything nowadays.
It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure talking to you and having you actually on this podcast, and because
pleasure.
actually about to go on. I think it's almost the hour call.
Yeah, we've got a show to do.
We do have a show to do. Got to get back to the.
My voice is warm, all this talking.
Very warm. Are there any places where people can look you up to see your stuff, or if anybody's interested?
Yeah, mostly my Instagram is where I put most of my stuff. I've got actually in lockdown I did a song challenge where I sang a song every day for a month, and it's not. And again, this was about completing, not about polishing, and so my rule was like no more than 3 takes.
Wow.
And so there's a couple where I crack highs, and it's not good necessarily, but there is a lot of when I think about how long that whole thing is, it's
yeah.
I do have a lot of singing content on my Instagram, and yeah, whenever I'm in a show or anything, I always put it up on my Instagram. And
so what's that? It's Andrew.
It's AW Coshan, Coshan. AWCOSHAN is my handle.
I'll also put that in the description.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. We're going to
pleasure.
chuff off. The next episode that I'm going to have is, I'm not sure, but I do have some extra people coming up, which will be involving some musical directors, some directors, as well as some vocal coaches. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and have a good whenever I post this.